The start of World War I goes much deeper than simply the assassination of Franz Ferdinand. With the rising of Germany as a world power and the decline of England along with the main causes, militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism, world war was inevitable. This Great War would lead to the amazing technological innovations, but at the cost of over 37 million people. The catalyst that kick-started the war was the assassination of Franz Ferdinand by the Serbian group known as the Black Hand. This caused Austria to declare war on Serbia, sending us into our First World War.
Following this assassination, each side was quick to turn to their allies as Britain, France, Russia, and Germany entered the war. Two powers were created in the world, the Allied and the Central Powers. The Allied were made up of Britain, France, Russia, and Serbia, and the Central Powers were made up of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy.
By November 14, 1914, each side started to utilize a new fighting strategy, trench warfare. It was estimated that along the Western Front, the Allies and Central Powers built 6,250 miles of trenches by the end of 1914. There were four types of trenches that were built in this war. The frontline trench, which was the firing and attacking trench. The support trench, that was there to assist the men with supplies in the front line. And the reserve trench lied several hundred yards back with the men and supplies ready to fight in the war. All these trenches had to be connected so communication was fast and efficient. They created the fourth type of trench, communication trenches. This allowed for the relay of messages, supplies, and men to be transported from trench to trench to allow for maximum support.
As the war progressed, the territory between the opposing trenches was given the name of No Man's Land. This was dangerous to cross as it was easy to shoot men not ducked behind the trench. The American doughboys refused to use trench warfare when they arrived later in the war, which helped lead to a victory for the Allied powers.
War has a way of accelerating innovations and inventions, and due to drastic measures during the 19th and 20th century, the need for new weapons shaped war as we know it today. From giant killing machines to simple guns to feminine hygiene products. The range of inventions during this time period were directly created because of the First World War. The Allies began on a project in 1915 to create a new weapon, the armored landship, or what is known today as the tank. Tanks were first introduced in battles on September 16th during the Battle of Flers-Courcelette. The destructive look of the tanks proved to be very misleading. They actually became more dangerous for the occupants in and around the tank than the opposition fighting against them. The British tried to revolutionize the war by creating the Vickers gun, which is a high-power, automatic rapid-fire gun, which has to be manned by a 6-man team. This was a very reliable gun and had more mobility than the former Gatling gun. A similar model of this gun was also produced in America, called the Lewis gun, which was a much smaller but a lot less reliable when out on the battlefield. A new weapon was introduced into warfare by the Germans that proved to be a huge factor in the psychological warfare between the two sides. The Germans introduced poisonous gas.
Both sides were able to design airplanes able to hold heavy bombs and were effective in shooting down vehicles and opposing men. With the help of this technology, Germany used a Schlieffen plan and avoided fighting on two fronts, invading France through Belgium in the west and taking on Russia in the east. On the Eastern Front, Russian forces invaded East Prussia and German Poland, but were stopped short at the Battle of Tannenberg in late August of 1914. Over the next 2 years, the Russian army mounted several offensive attacks on Eastern Front, but were unable to break through German lines. On the Western Front, French and British forces battled Germany, who was deep into northeastern France after destroying Belgium. The Battle of Verdun and the Battle of Somme of 1916 also took place on the Western Front.
At the first light of dawn Christmas morning, many of the German soldiers emerged from the trenches and approached the Allied lines across no man's land, calling out, "Merry Christmas," in their enemy's native tongue. At first, the Allied soldiers feared it was a trick, but seeing the Germans unarmed, they climbed out of their trenches and shook hands with the enemy soldiers. There was even a documented case of soldiers from opposing sides playing a good-natured game of soccer.
And I brought me some corn.
Nearing the end of the war in April of 1917, the US, who had remained neutral up until this point, declared war on Germany. The sinking of the Lusitania, the naval blockade around Great Britain, and the Zimmermann telegram are all reasons the US decided to intervene. The arrival of new, fresh troops was crucial for the Allied powers, as Russia will pull out of the war in March of 1918 by signing a peace treaty with Germany after the March Revolution. With the help of new troops and the US refusal of using trench warfare, the Allied powers were able to push back Germany and go on to win the war. Following the war, the Treaty of Versailles of 1919 imposed large punishments on Germany, including paying for the damage, giving up their military, and giving up their colonies. Germany and Austria-Hungary were broken as well. The League of Nations was a new peace organization developed following this war, and the US refused to join. World War I will be remembered for its casualties, with 10 million soldiers and 7 million civilians because of total warfare, the spread of the Spanish flu, and its new technology.